All right, let's jump right into this explainer and unpack a massive socio-technical shift that is completely reshaping our world. We're talking about the twin transition. Now, if you think this is just about, rolling out slightly smarter software or slapping a few solar panels on a roof, think again. This is the ultimate collision of digitalization and sustainability. It's a fundamental, ground-up transformation of our labor markets, our policies, and honestly, our ethical responsibilities.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by defining exactly what this twin transition is. Then, look at how it's changing jobs and creating new skills. From there, we'll dive into measurement biases, tackle the whole power asymmetry problem, explore how policy guides innovation, and finally, wrap up with how we build responsible digital futures.
Okay, let's kick things off with part 1, understanding what happens when digitization actually meets sustainability.
The absolutely crucial point here is that this isn't just about cool new tech over here and climate action happening in a silo over there. Our source material defines this as a co-evolutionary process. They don't just happen at the same time, they actually drive each other. And more importantly, this whole shift focuses heavily on labor, skills, and structural change. Basically, it's a massive institutional transformation, not just a technical one.
Think of the twin transition as that perfect sweet spot where digital innovation directly fuels sustainable progress. We're talking about deploying things like data science, artificial intelligence, and digital platforms to directly enable green transitions in heavy-hitting sectors like energy, mobility, and food. Imagine using smart digital grid management to optimize offshore wind energy, or using intense data analytics to just drastically reduce waste across global supply chains. It's a real game changer.
Now, moving on to our second section, let's talk about the labor market. How does this macro-level shift actually impact your daily life and career?
Before we all panic about robots taking our jobs entirely, we really need to understand a fundamental distinction. Whole occupations rarely disappear overnight, but the specific tasks within them, they absolutely do. Think of your job as a bundle of specific tasks. You might keep the exact same job title over the next 10 years, but the day-to-day stuff you actually do will radically shift as hybrid twin skills, basically combining data tools with sustainability know-how, become the absolute norm.
To put that into perspective, let's look at some fascinating examples from Norway's maritime and aquaculture sectors. We can see the labor market transforming through 4 distinct mechanisms here. First up is substitution, where tech straight up replaces human labor, like automated navigation on ships. Then we have complementarity, where tech boosts productivity. Think AI helping captains optimize their routes. Third is recomposition, which is a change in your task mix, like in aquaculture, where workers now spend way less time manually feeding fish and much more time analyzing sensor data. And finally, entirely new occupations emerge, like fish health data scientists. So the big question is, will your current job be substituted or beautifully augmented?
Let's pivot to Section 3 and uncover some of the hidden risks here, specifically around measurement biases and divides.
We have to step back and ask a pretty urgent question. How do we actually measure this transition? And more importantly, who is getting left out? We rely so heavily on data sources like online job ads or firm surveys to tell us what's happening in the economy. But whose skills are systematically excluded from those databases? If our data only reflects those who are already digitally visible, well, we've got a massive blind spot. And here is the ultimate aha moment of this whole explainer. If a green skill or an informal job isn't coded properly in a policy database, it effectively doesn't exist for decision makers. The algorithms trained on that historical data will just reproduce the same old inequalities. Because in governance and funding, what counts becomes what matters. If we don't measure a skill, we won't train for it, and we definitely won't fund its development.
If our measurement is biased, we risk deepening 4 critical divides, literally leaving vulnerable populations stranded as the economy accelerates. We're looking at a regional divide, where rural areas are left in the dust by urban tech hubs. That's compounded by a gender divide, since women have historically been underrepresented in technical roles. Then there's an education divide, placing low-educated workers at a much higher risk of losing their jobs. And finally, an age divide, where older workers might really struggle to adapt without targeted reskilling support.
That brings us to Section 4, the power asymmetry problem. Seriously, who actually controls this transition?
There is some extreme tension going on in what we call the power triangle. On one side, you have massive firms controlling the capital, the technology, the platforms, and mountains of data. On another side, you have the state trying to set rules, standards, and handle redistribution. And then at the bottom, there's the citizens,
workers, and consumers, who usually have a highly fragmented voice and a lot less bargaining power compared to the other two.
When you break down these interactions, it becomes super clear that rolling out new technology is an exercise in power. Firms lobby the state. The state regulates back using frameworks like GDPR or public procurement rules. But crucially, firms hold massive, direct influence over everyday citizens through the algorithms they design, the wages they set, and the prices they control. It is a very delicate ecosystem of power that requires some serious balancing.
So how do we balance it? Let's dive into Section 5 and look at the state's response and how policy guides innovation. The state essentially has two big levers it can pull. Supply-side policies are what we usually think of, right? R&D tax credits, grants, funding universities, that sort of thing. But demand-side policies flip the script entirely. Imagine the government acting as the ultimate lead consumer. By committing to buy, say, thousands of green digital vehicles for a public fleet, they instantly guarantee a market and practically force that new technology into existence.
You can think of these as modern-day moonshots. Programs like Europe's Horizon Europe take this a step further, rallying both the public and private sectors around massive, concrete goals like tackling climate change or building sustainable food systems. These are called mission-oriented policies. Instead of just throwing money at a random sector and crossing their fingers for a breakthrough, they target grand societal challenges with specific, time-bound, and measurable objectives. It gives innovation a deliberate, urgent direction.
Finally, let's move to our last section, building responsible digital futures, and what ethics in action actually looks like. We have 4 core pillars that act as a practical toolkit for responsible governance. First, anticipation, which means asking what could possibly go wrong long before it actually does. Then reflexivity, which is about questioning our own values, like is a goal of data-driven efficiency quietly making people's jobs worse? Third is inclusion, meaning actively bringing affected groups to the table, not just assuming we know what they want. And last is responsiveness, the actual capacity to pivot and change our strategy based on new evidence or stakeholder feedback.
I really want you to remember this crucial takeaway straight from our sources. Building our future is a deeply human responsibility. We're not just sitting back and passively watching a neutral evolution of faster processors and cheaper solar panels. We are actively shaping distributional outcomes. We are deciding who wins, who loses, and whose needs actually count in this new economy.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to challenge you to look closely at your own workplace. Think about the specific tasks shifting in your daily job, the potential measurement biases in your company's systems, and who really holds the power in your sector. Are you passively watching the twin transition happen, or are you actively working to ensure it's responsible, reflexive, and inclusive? It's a lot to think about. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.